When a stone falls, we ask why. The question itself indicates that all happenings have a cause. Ancient Eastern mystics were not just known for their incredible wisdom, but also for having a powerful positive effect on the world and people around them. If you ask them how they are able to so lovingly control the universe, you'll get similar answers across the board. They'll say they are in direct communion with the causal realm, known simply as Tao, and can bring that sentience down into ours when the timing and reasoning is right. Hermes T spoke with the Nous. Jesus Christ was in touch with the Father. Arjuna of the Bhagavad Gita interviewed Krishna. The teacher of Ramdas, named Karoli Baba, interacted with Ram. Similar tunes are sung by modern mystics like Don Juan and Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa. Seemingly unrelated to that list, an eerie parallel seems to emerge from great scientific minds of men like David Bohm with his Implicate order and Rupert Sheldrake with his morphogenic field. And that list is getting longer every day. But this isn't just a dual interpretation. Philosophers like the Greek Stoics and medieval alchemists made this ordeal personal by speculating how the mysterious phenomena of reality's other side affects us in our everyday lives and psyche. So we have a trifecta to look at today, and a surprise fourth at the end. The mystics make us realize, whether we want to or not. Modern physicists bring us the hard evidence of such realms, and lastly, philosophers and alchemists teach us how to personally harness this power that is effortlessly yet infinitely emanating from the higher worlds that are haunting yet creating us right now in every moment. But before running wild with these concepts, we need to build our foundation. You know how we do. Let's look at some examples. Up until recently, people thought they could divide matter into segments over and over again until finally we could reach the fundamental building blocks of what reality is. Here's the problem. Things kept dividing with no end in sight. And the more technology advanced, the more things kept dividing like fractals, where each segregated part, no matter how isolated, still contained the essence of the whole. This holographic principle is best illustrated in the Mandelbrot set. Fun fact, the B in Benoit B. Mandelbrot stands for Benoit B. Mandelbrot. And then quantum physics came along and threw the entire notion of indivisible units out the window with the discovery of the wave function. We are left with two equally unbelievable results, particles and waves. Two words for the same thing behaving differently depending on us, the ones interacting with it. The causal ordering of reality itself acts as a wave of potential outcomes until a conscious entity comes along to say hello, at which point the wave collapses into an actual unit of matter, a particle, mystifying physicists ever since. Well, except for Neil, who, for reasons we can only speculate, seems to flaunt a gross misunderstanding of this entire process, seemingly on purpose. I don't know, you figure him out. But get this, the same idea was taught in ancient schools of Tantra with the terms Bindu and Nada. Bindu meaning point, and Nada meaning movement and vibration. In Hindu philosophy, when the Brahma creates matter, nada is produced first. It is described as an idea by a cosmic consciousness that is swiftly followed by Bindu, the things we can hear and see and feel. So waves into particles, or nada into Bindu. In both cases, we see a clear depiction of two worlds that coexist in a dance of yin and yang, both depending on the other for anything to exist at all. the world we can see and sense directly, and a mysterious other side that cannot be grasped by our waking state of biology, a waking state that the other side depends on to become tangibly real. And just as importantly, the tangibly real depends on the other side to have the information needed to birth a world detectable to our waking state. Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful, but don't worry, it gets worse. For now though, think of a mirror. If it wasn't for its purpose, a reflection, it wouldn't exist. Quick footnote. Would it be safe to speculate that shamanic technologies like mescaline, psilocybin, and DMT possibly inhibit the part of the waking state that collapses the wave function of nada into Bindu? Could this indicate that the world we are cast into under the influence of altered states is a direct glimpse into the causal realms? Because if so, that means the causal realms are inhabited by sentient entities. But let's reel it in for now and hit up some more examples, like our modern lines of force and the ancient hairs of Shiva. Physicist John Wheeler is known for coining the term black hole, a still theoretical concept that might soon be axed by the much simpler electric universe model, different video. Nevertheless, as a theoretical physicist, he has some idea gems that will come in handy for our comparisons today. Wheeler postulates a quantum foam that interpenetrates every bit of reality, thus connecting all things to all other things. Ironically, this nuclear model creates a clear description of the behavioral phenomenon seen in electricity. When electric lines of force converge upon a region of space, they don't just crisscross, but seem to converge and sink into the fabric of space, like threads being pulled through a funnel or down a bathtub drain. Wheeler suggests that they must be passing into a wormhole. A classical geometrodynamical electric charge is a set of lines of force trapped in the topology of space. Well, ancient Eastern cosmology sings a tune not just similar, but exact, personified by the hairs of Shiva. They taught that the very fabric of space was woven by these very hairs, active threads that permeate all things, connecting them to all other things. The hairs of Shiva can force reality to expand and contract. We might also easily be reminded of a Buddhist concept known as the net of Indra that illustrates this quite poetically. The Buddhist sutra beautifully states, "In the heaven of Indra, there is a network of pearls, so arranged that if you look at one, you see all others reflected in it." In the same way, each object in the world is not merely itself, but involves every other object, and in fact is every other object. These startling comparisons inspired our cousin Dave to write. It is utterly incredible that these ancient texts should speak of space in terms of a substance containing trapped lines of force. It is only in the past century that Western science has been able to comprehend space in non-Euclidean terms and tackle the concept of curvature. Yet, centuries ago, the tantric text referred to an expansion and contraction in the akasha. The mathematical conception behind this is stupendous. Wheeler postulates that electric charge, or the lines in an electric or magnetic field, are literally lines of force trapped in the fabric of space-time. Sarfati suggests that the organization of matter is due to a spectrum of self-organizing fields, similar in properties to Harold Saxton Burr's fields of life. Also self-organizing, which organizes matter out of the turbulent sea of the quantum foam. Assuredly, the hairs of Shiva, which organize matter out of the turbulent sea of the akasha, are the same thing. When Wheeler came to these conclusions, he was backed by observational evidence, thanks to technology and acute measurements by expensive instrumentation. How the two or more ancient Eastern sects stumbled onto this universal force is anyone's guess. But perhaps the mystics were spot on in claiming to experience and interact with these realms firsthand. But again, let's reel in another example. One I'll have trouble pronouncing, Omnijectivity and Shakti. We have already pointed out the lack of separation between observer and the observed, making us all literal participators so long as we are aware. Rather than objective or subjective, this view of reality can be called omnijective. Mind and matter are ripples in the same pond. Think of a dream. There might be trees, cars, babies, and Tom Holland on a 94 Mongoose bicycle. But no matter what might be there, each part of the dream is eternally connected to every other part, as they are all made of the same dream substance. Dream Play-Doh. This hypothetically reflects how everything and the laws that govern everything break down near a black hole, where all logic goes straight down the tubes, like in your dream with Tom Holland. Now, I'm not here to argue the case of what black holes are. We can only observe their behavior. Ironic, really, considering what we observed above. But what black holes are famous for is making reality disappear. Carl Sagan explains that at the end of its life, a star performs a collapse so powerful that nothing can stop it from swallowing everything in sight, including light and time. To be clear, it doesn't just eat reality, but it also eats the laws that govern reality. A real mind melter if you dwell on it too long, because then what laws does it follow? And to be even more clear, black holes are not things in space, but holes in whatever space is. It doesn't have 3 dimensions of form as we would be familiar. But when reality disappears, where does it go? Modern science has no idea, but our ancient ancestors might after having seen it firsthand. According to Vedic tradition, it is withdrawn into Shakti, or that which created it in the first place, technically making it the first mother to ever shout, "I brought you into this world, and damn it, I'll take you out." We are just recently finding that black holes do indeed eject matter into the cosmos. The holes that take are the holes that make. Let's take a look at this so-called Shakti of Eastern teachings. This cosmic mother that will birth you and then eat you for dinner is unbelievably described with a modern ring as a mathematical point without any magnitude. If you're reminded of our above listed Shiva Bindu, you'd be spot on. A tantric axiom that goes, without Shakti, Shiva is a corpse, makes clear that Shakti is not a divine being or even a personification of one. It is the inseparable energy of pure awareness by which God can be. Zoomed in, it is the driving force of the human being, making us animate, a divine spark. The parallels on this one keep coming though. The modern description of a micro black hole is that of a photon chasing its own tail. A comparison to the alchemical Ouroboros is almost too easy, but sticking with our theme of Eastern mysticism, we are taught that around the Shiva Bindu is a coiled Shakti, a mathematical line that touches all opposing sides of a point, around which this allegorical serpent is coiled. A point and a line, or a Bindu and a Shakti, have no spatial dimension that can be measured. In other words, a gravitational disk, like hypothesized to orbit a black hole. At this point, we are seeing that the differences between modern and ancient cosmological philosophies are found only in the mouth noise used to express it. But the ancient version takes this another step further, another step that drives all of the above conceptual mysterium into the utmost importance for us personally. Remembering that there is no separation between the observer and the observed. Making everything omnijective creates an unignorable realization, a realization thus far ignored by modern materialist science. If all of these things are happening in the macrocosmic space contained within our reality, then these things must also be happening within us, microcosmically. And if these happenings are governed by laws conducted by the macrocosmic serpents all coiled up out there, then these happenings within us are also governed by those same laws. a microcosmic serpent coiled up the same way. A serpent with a name you've heard before, Kundalini. The Tantras assert that the universe may be considered an emanation of the mind. The appearance that it is physical and objective is Mahayama, or the greatest illusion. But the universe is not a projection of only one mind. Each of us contributes to the creation of the projection, say the Tantras. Any interaction between mind and matter destroys the subjective-objective duality. The distinction between I and this is no longer present. The quality of our lives is the ultimate placebo effect. The gravity of placebo is a matter of fact. Our psychological state dictates how our body is governed. Our cousin Talbot makes these implications clear in his interview on a wonderful show called Thinking Aloud, in an episode where you can see the host, Jeffrey Mishlove, getting gayer by the minute just being near Mr. Talbot.
Bottom line is somehow this man had the ability to access some deep level of healing himself. It wasn't the drug, because salt water worked just as well as this alleged drug. Here's an instance where he responded to the model of reality in his head, this deep belief that this drug would heal him, even though he wasn't even receiving the drug. When I first heard this, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, about every donut that I'd ever eaten in my life, and thought, oh, this is really bad for me, that I may be responding to the model of reality more than you know, the nutritional aspects of the donut.
Well, I think the stories of this kind have been known to scientists for hundreds of years, but they've kind of been dismissed because scientists haven't had a good way to look at the possibility that consciousness can affect physical systems. Now, when you say it's holographic, what do we mean, really?
Hologram, it means, as William Blake said, that quite literally you can find the universe in a grain of sand, that every portion of the universe contains some semblance of the whole universe.
That's very profound.
Very.
It's
In the Himalayas, the cold is overcome by adepts with a hatha yogic combination of visualization and breathing called tumo. The yogis will be covered in cold, wet sheets until they are dry from body heat alone. They have also demonstrated the melting of thick ice sheets rapidly by just sitting there. Safe to say, their butts must be hotter than Jessica Alba's from Into the Blue. Scientifically impossible, but okay. These results have been demonstratedly proven, but the exact process of technique is kept a secret. Rest assured though, it is most likely very close to the Wim Hof method, accompanied by extreme mental fixation on the body's natural ability to generate electricity. The power of mind over matter has, for eons, implied the plausibility of personal superpowers. The point of view that our bodies are heavy material density, separate from the mind, is Maya, or illusion. This might lead us down a weird path of speculation. What if sentience is directly related to density? Okay, stick with me for a moment. Think about how it is not weight that dictates if something floats, it's density. So look at our familiar three states of matter: solid, liquid, gas. It is clear that the amount of activity performed by the molecules within a substance dictates the viscosity of it. More activity, more pliable movement. Less activity, and we get closer to solid matter. The easiest example is ice, water, gas. On the far end of this spectrum is our friend plasma, under different names: ether, chi, electromagnetic force, prana, pick your favorite. It is described as being the finest state of matter possible, and sentient, plausibly sentient. See these videos for that. Could it be that our above mentioned Shakti might fall into this category? But it seems logical in this regard that degree of conscious awareness fluctuates with the level of density worn by its vehicle. A down-to-earth example might be how spongy and light our brain is compared to bone and muscle. A cosmic example might be the invisible plasmas like our Kordylewski clouds, a channel favorite, that orbit the Earth, taking down a record of everything it observes. Again, see these videos. The more subtle the medium, the more active the sentience carried by it, more room for activities. This should remind us of the rainbow body attained by those taught in the school of Tibetan Buddhism, where the practitioner's physical form becomes fluid to the point of being pure light or spirit. It is surely the most powerful form of self-placebo that can be applied. A huge mental stretch, of course, until we can digest the fact that modern science itself has shown that light and matter are indeed interchangeable. What makes us any different? The only difference I can think of is that we get in our own way by overthinking it due to the willingness to program a specific belief system into our worldview, despite knowing full well the concept of infinity. That so-called lore of completeness has us thirsting for a finite realness. The world of a child can be described as quasi-hallucinatory. A world of imagination and boundary-free perception is gradually whittled down to a very specific system of beliefs that we adhere to, with a grasp so strong we will debate, kill, or cancel anyone so bold enough to challenge it. So, perhaps this is the case with density. Matter is just the slowest vibration of conscious energy. In other words, dumbed down, making it clear as to why the alchemical symbol for ether or mind has always been the circle or sphere, and the symbol for our material realm and body is the square or cube. And of course, between the two is Mercury, the communion of the above that uses the triangle's point to pierce into the below to nudge us in the right direction. Well, usually. Alchemically speaking, Eastern or Western, the goal is the same: to refine the subtle character of our tangible vehicle by releasing it, working with it, and reinserting it in such a way that completely overthrows our biological limitations. The tool used in the East, Kundalini, is already built in, prefabricated to the human form at birth. The process varies greatly depending on the source, and it'll be different for each individual, of course, making the whole thing kind of confusing. But essentially, the esoteric tradition loosely depicts it like so. When the moon is in your sun sign, you can abstain from food, stimulants, and sex. A proper meditation during this fast from fun will drive the chemical serpent or Shakti up your spine, igniting your transducer, the pineal gland, to now see the full wave function of reality, to see basically all potentials. Now, this could be its own entire video, so let me know in the comments if that's your cup of tea. Okay, so we see direct ties between the meditative insight of ancient Eastern mystics and modern-day quantum physics, with a sprinkle of alchemical transmutation mixed with a dash of Kundalini. What can we do with this realizing to make our world better as a whole? Talbot sees the entire world as being a macro version of Schrodinger's cat, saying its reality and its unreality are solely contingent upon how the collective arranges the world. And this is no afterthought. He backs up his claim thoroughly with both science and mysticism. Jerome Bruner of Harvard's Center of Cognitive Studies is about as prestigious as you get. He does not think the world is a direct experience, saying that we represent the world to ourselves and then respond to our representations. Basically, we dream up our world, not as individuals, but as one collective unit. Indeed, if you were to view humanity from a sidereal point of view, we will appear to be one creature, like a moss spread across a stone. Our illusion of a singular reality is the result of the interference patterns colliding from all possible realities. As we collectively agree on the existence of particular hallucinations, we change our minds gradually as we evolve, creating the construct of time. But unbeknownst to us, a habit forms. We side with the common consensus, and we do it for the sole purpose of survival. Once upon a time, survival hinged entirely on fitting into your particular tribe. Thus, adapting to your environment meant adopting the mindset of those already familiar with it. So what happens when we leave society altogether? Well, we can ask two people about this and get two wildly different answers. And that's kind of the point here. Example number one, Lao Tzu. Zen masters, traditionally speaking, would always leave society to go die in the mountains, or more esoterically speaking, live on forever up there in the sky. But the parallel here is that leaving society would break them free from the collective hive mind that they have adopted from the masses. They would then experience a reality contingent solely on their own devices, or lack thereof. Example number two, the crazy person outside of Quick Trip pacing around and talking to bees. Much like Lao Tzu, they left society too, just not so willingly. The longer this person wearing 17 flannels pushing a shopping cart full of Dr. Pepper cans is separated from our collective whole, the crazier they appear to us. They are now swimming in a world that the rest of us have not tended to agree on. Their reality is a bush that goes untrimmed. This raises a huge question. Are they actually crazy? And more importantly, what is crazy? Should they be guilty because of this divergence? Or is it that their particular stream of conscious projection is no longer compatible with Nancy's from the HR department? Their reality is no longer reflecting ours, and ours is no longer affecting theirs. Without this participation in the millions and billions of tiny social interactions needed to contribute to the collective construct of normalcy. This is reminiscent of the teachings of Don Juan as written about by his student Carlos Castronada. Don Juan teaches of the nagual and the tonal. He insists that our eyes are fixed on the tonal, which then claims our mind as its own. This is a good thing, though, for survival here in our 3D material realm, because according to Juan, if we were to see its opposite, the nagual, it would drive us right into madness. It would overload our biological sensory tools. But that doesn't mean we should entirely ignore the nagual. Juan encourages us to blink our eyes, so to speak, to catch a glimpse of what is possible without fully gazing into the void that will overwhelm our fragile psyche. The surest way to do this can be found in Tibetan schools, where they describe the Madhya Mekha. I tried. Basically, the reason tea Buddhists are supposed to renounce worldly things, besides the whole temptation spiel, is that the world is as non-real as dreams. The frightening flip side to that coin is obvious. Dreams are as real as the world. So the practice needed to overcome and master this collective dream is as difficult as it is simple. Control the dream state. This is not to be confused with lucid dreaming. This form of sleep yoga insists that the student maintain his waking level of consciousness going into and out of the threshold separating the two worlds, thereby realizing they are one. Man's mind mirrors a universe which mirrors man's mind. In this dichotomy of mind and universe, that snake is eating its own tail. Or, as Alan Watts would phrase it better, God experiences himself by living through us. On that note, here's a curveball that will bug you for weeks on end. Early in his career, Uncle Carl wrote that flying saucers were psychological projections emanating from the collective mind of a modern people bereft of religious nourishment. Much lesser known is that at the end of his life, he changed his mind. suggesting that the saucers are actually projecting us into the world. An absolute mind fuck, because he didn't really elaborate further, and then he died. Perhaps you remember when we mentioned the creation of thought-formed tulpas in our episode Mentalism, First Hermetic Law. What we didn't mention is the quantum construct in which the Vajrayana Buddhists do their work. Like many physicists of today, the Vajrayana are atheists, albeit in a much different, almost ironic way. The Vaj envision the personified form of their highest beings, knowing in full that they have created them personally. A lesson that a few Christians might want to take a small gander at. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not saying to adopt the dogma. I'm just saying to look at it.
First thing I do is I say, would you look at this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just look at it.
Oh, look at this.
Would you?
Oh, would you look at this?
Just look.
Real
Right,
close
right,
together.
right,
There's
right.
Still a lot of room to work.
Here's the ironic part. Their creations exist, that is, in the causal realms, making them real and effective and possible for anyone with the discipline to concoct one. Talbot writes about it. The yogin undergoes a rigid program of mental control, visualization until becoming able to imagine seeing the deity as if it were standing before him or her. As Blofeld states, with further practice, it becomes alive like a being seen in a dream. Even that is not enough. As higher states of consciousness supervene, it will be seen to exist in a much more real sense than a person, whereas this shining being has power to confer unspeakable bliss and, after union, to remain one with the adept and purify his thoughts and actions. The important point is that, from the start, the Vajrayana yogin remains an atheist, not believing in the entities conjured up. The philosophy recognizes that to trigger the reality structurer, it is important to simply feed the biocomputer with the proper symbols. There is an immense power in religion. It is religion that enables 70,000 Catholics to alter their reality and perceive the miracle at Fatima in one massive rite of visualization. Religion is a meta-program, a set of symbols which enables the biocomputer to communicate with the structurally lower levels of the nervous system that control the reality structurer. It is easier to believe in simple cosmic hierarchies than it is to deal with the highly abstract notions such as Nagual and the void. Visualization is a yoga of the mind. It produces quick results by utilizing forces familiar to man, only at the deeper levels of consciousness of which ordinary people rarely become aware, except in dreams. These are forces wherewith mind creates and animates the whole universe. Ordinarily, they are not ours to command for until the false ego is negated, or unless we employ yogic means to transcend its bounds. Our individual minds function, as it were, like small puddles isolated from the great ocean. To our Western minds, the fact that the Vajrayana yogin confesses to be an atheist and still worships an entire pantheon of deities may seem a bit illogical, but that is why we have so much difficulty in dealing with Schrodinger's cat. This gives us a remarkable new slant on religion. Just as the physicist has found that the nature of matter ultimately defies any single structure or model superimposed on it, the nature of the universe most assuredly defies any single religious model superimposed on it, and instead becomes our most potent mechanism for controlling the universe. So the map is not the territory, but the reason a map is useful is because it eliminates everything else that you're not using, like roads. When Lao Tzu left society for the mountains, it wasn't just to experience an isolated reality. He, like any Zen master who beat feet, didn't do so because he got the butcher's daughter pregnant. The Zen master needed that secluded reality to be able to bend hours from a controllable distance. When we are down in the shit, we can't focus our eyes on the entire picture. This is the lure of completeness again, hijacking our psyche, like Dick Cheney on a clear September morning. We are enveloped in the complexities of the world and consider it to be, well, it. The Zen master recognized society's people as one collective child mind that needed to be protected against itself, not quite suited for the real world yet. What made the Zen master a mystic in this regard was developing the conscious tools needed to work with the reality structurer on our behalf. In this case, a global meditation, the signal of which had maximum service up high in the mountains. After years of "can you hear me now," he had more bars in more places and would sacrifice his own livelihood to augment the grand causal architecture, self-sacrifice for the good of the whole. Easier said than done, by the way. If we consider what Don Juan said above, this ability comes only to those who can take it. Our nervous system organizes itself to compute a stable reality that keeps us from being crazy. But also, this reality filtering mechanism is what confuses top minds in the field of quantum and astrophysics into believing that there is a stark border between them and the causal. They see this strange world through instruments and equations. No form of gnosis is considered. They are studying a copy of a copy because that is what can be measured. Meanwhile, scoffing at direct experience through the shamanic technologies mentioned above. How do you explain to someone like Neil that Johnny Carson is not actually in the television when he is fully aware of how a TV works down to its most intricate details? The trees are in the forest. Sometimes the intricate parts have us missing the point of a much bigger picture. We'll come back to that at the very end. But ultimately, all of these versions are pointing to the same core truth. We live in a collective super hologram created by the mind, and quantum physics describes the technically intricate process involved in that happening: mind, energy, matter. Another concept seen as fundamentally false by modern physicists, despite their own equations pointing directly to that fact. We all know a famous one: E equals mc squared. Matter is just highly condensed energy. Take it only a couple steps further, and you'll find the void staring right back at you. The motion proposed on the floor today is simple. The quantum world of modern day physics is only now being rediscovered by mankind and was once paradoxically mastered by Eastern mystics with first-hand experience, who could use these realizations to actually bend reality to their will, so long as their will reflected a greater will. It is no surprise that this notion has inspired a plethora of debunkers to swoop in and do what they are supposed to do: bring it all right back down to earth. And for good reason. It is human nature to cherry pick our favorite things and attach them to respected things in order to validate them. I do it all the time, and I have to go out of my way when writing these scripts to catch myself far-reaching and, well, keep it reeled in. Connecting quantum physics to Eastern mysticism is easy because they both have attributes in common. They are both very vague and misunderstood by the layman, and neither of them can be described with common language. Both require an entirely new paradigm of thinking, but the specifics are there. What we need is a third party to enter the playground for checks and balances, and I think that third party has been overlooked for centuries. The names have changed, but the story stays the same. A phrase commonly used on this channel, and an axiom I stand by to make all of this digestible. It's a notion I stole from Joseph Campbell that he took from Uncle Carl, because, well, it's true. These men worked as kind of vibe translators, helping us pry open the mind to people divided literally by a world of difference. Nowhere is this help more needed than with the strange, abstract, and alien literature written and hidden away by the Gnostics. The Gnostic myth of Sophia is about as absurd as it gets. We read it under the guise of pre-Christian literature, and thus immediately associate it with religious fervor and strict spiritual connotations. But we also assumed the same thing about Eastern Zen literature before the modern emergence of quantum theory led us to see further into it as something fundamentally real and eternal. Hence, the Tao is the unified field and so on. What if the events described in the Gnostic story of Sophia and her demiurgos child are not once upon a time styled singular happenings, like we assume, but instead internal and eternal happenings that perpetually penetrate our world as causal? If so, the Western thought process expressed therein would easily unite the two worlds that we have been discussing today. Let's keep in mind while reading this that laboratory plasma has been shown to create its own dust from nothing. And in the electric universe cosmological model, stars are what give birth to planets in the first place. I am planning a deep dive on that notion in the future. For now though, in the most as above, so below kind of way, I see those to be the same happening. So, let's take a walk. In the ineffable world of light, there existed a primal pair named depth and silence, a perfect balance of creative power consisting of 30 forms of consciousness called aeons. The youngest and most adventurous of these, called Sophia, fell in love with her own royal progenitor, the great invisible king of the all, called Depth, and wished to fathom his perennially inscrutable nature. Perennially inscrutable. Put that on your Father's Day card, huh? She espied a magnificent light shimmering with sublime grace in her bewilderment. She could no longer distinguish between the above and below, and thus came to assume that the seductive light, which was in reality below her, was none other than the royal effulgence of the great. She descended into the abysmal void, where in a boundless and fathomless sea of glass, the reflection of the heavenly light beckoned to her. She plunged into the murky deep, only to discover how the reflected light had deceived her. Frightened, she found herself enclosed, devoid of the quality and power of Gnosis to which she was accustomed in the fullness. Desirous of having a kindred figure next to her, she brought forth in a virginal fashion a being. Outside the supernal spiritual universe, alone and comfortless, Sophia experienced every sort of psychic storm imaginable. Passion, sorrow, fear, despair, and ignorance exuded from her being like mighty clouds and condensed into the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air, as well as into a number of beings which later were known as names like Demiurge and Archontes, fierce and troublesome spirits. Out of the raw material, they built a world of impressive external appearance, yet replete with great flaws, having been created in the image of its creators. Fear, ignorance, and other painful passions were built into the fabric of this imperfect world. Sophia was filled with pity for creation and resolved to assist. Thus, she became the spirit of the world, anxiously observing it like a mother is wont to do when watching over a feeble and misshapen child. Is wont to do. Sophia prayed and sorrowed over her fate and the fate of the flawed world, and the sparks of light enmeshed in the nets of the rulers, who, like monstrous spiders, continued to manifest webs of matter, emotion, and thought for the entrapment of humans. In essence, not their creation, but rather the sparks of Sophia's own higher nature infused into bodies of clay. Calm down, we're not done yet. Thus, she divided her nature in half, one to ascend into the eons of fullness, the other to remain in proximity to creation and continue to assist it with compassionate wisdom. It came to pass that the universe constellated itself in 3 regions, ruled by a prince whom the ancients called Pan, and whom others inaccurately called the devil. This prince rules over the earth, the plants, and living creatures, and like a patient shepherd, sees to it that all of these manifestations of Sophia's life may one day reach the higher worlds, no matter how far they stray. Still hope for you, Sean. Higher in immaterial space is the world of souls or mind, which is ruled by the chief archon, also called Demiurge, and having numerous names, including Yaldabaoth, childish god, and Saklas, blind one. It is from this realm that the arrogant and power-hungry godling that many of the concepts and precepts originate that enthrall the minds and wills of humans. The blind god has a great liking for what he is pleased to call law, fashioned in order to diminish freedom, which is the birthright of the spirit. Ideologies of diverse sorts are also placed into human minds by the demiurge, along with greed, power, and other obsessions that becloud and vitiate spiritual purity. In the world above planets is a region where Sophia, the celestial mother, and wise helpers of humankind are enthroned. With her countless hosts of angels of light and righteous souls that once occupied human bodies. This is the world of spirit where the twin angels of human personalities also reside. The 3 cosmic regions have their corresponding portions within the nature of the children of men. Within every human is the material part, Hyle, derived from the kingdom of Pan, carrying the instincts and urges of material life with the intentionality of survival and physical continuity. Continuity, thank you, oh my God. All right, I'm running these scripts by you from now on. There is also a portion embodying mind and emotion referred often as soul or psyche. Third is the human spirit, pneuma, which belongs to the fullness, although it is a gift of Sophia. Okay, so there is way more to that, and all of it is equally fantastic in abstraction. But that abstraction is kind of the point. What kind of realizations inspired such a strange story in the first place? Could it be the same realizing experienced by our Eastern mystics, but filtered through the Western rhetoric and the personified figures of pre-Christian psyches? Let's break it down. Depth and silence, also called the waters of the deep, might be compared to our unified field in physics. Like the Tao, it is the pure creative force that everything stems from, and paradoxically, also pure receptivity. Hold that thought for the end, please. The aeons seem to be forces of nature on a cosmic level, the natural law that we, admittedly, just don't understand yet. Sophia was distracted by a shimmering bright light that turns out was actually from below. I can't help but be reminded of the Tibetan Book of the Dead that teaches the dying to follow the clear light rather than falling for the temptation of the false light that loops us right back where we started. This false light plunged her into a murky deep, ignorance and forgetting. This is obviously Walmart and Dollar General, but now isolated from the unified field, she experienced the full range of sensations felt by any living being trapped in survival mode of physical flesh. And her despair exuded mighty clouds that condensed into the elements. I mean, how are planets really born anyway? The Pistis Sophia actually specifically mentions the mineral world as being a part of Sophia that needed to be saved. The alchemical connotations are clear as day, but I can't help being reminded of the work of Itzhak Bentov, as covered extensively in this episode. If you're new to the channel, this is one of our viewer favorites and certainly worth checking out. Link below. I also combined all of our Bentov episodes into one video. And if you think that releasing these compilation videos is selling out, well, yeah, it is. These 3+ hour long videos are absolute cash cows. Sophia gave birth to an imperfect world. And, well, there is not one astrophysicist today that doesn't say that they are baffled by how messy the construct of the atomic universe is. In fact, they use this messiness as an example against the case of creation, saying, why would a creator do such a sloppy job? I mean, the irony is almost satirical. Sophia's creation yielded beings that were feeble and misshapen. Well, in the world of modern biology, scientists are often thrown off by how sloppy a job evolution does at arranging creatures according to their environments. Messiness that is also seen as a slight against creationism by some zoologists. This murky, flawed reality is depicted as a net and a web, where the archons patrol like monstrous spiders. If you don't see that connection, just restart the video. But there is something interesting there that is easily overlooked. The archons manifested webs of not just matter, but also emotion and thought. The matter described here is certainly the macrocosmic zodiacal worlds, the cosmos. Adding emotion and thought, the text is indicating that they are not inherently separate things, just as the mystics have laid out for us. And further indicating, as astrology has it, one has a major effect on the other. Another notion scoffed at by our modern scientific mechanical dogma, despite they themselves insisting that we are all star stuff. Interesting, the word usage there, stuff. They say we are all star stuff, but screech the brakes at star being. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I see stuff and being as the same noun. One of them just sounds more dumbed down, non-sentient. Now that's irony. Sophia then imbues this net with her divine light to help her children, us, who are trapped here in its physical form. This is certainly depicting the divine spark, bewildering scientists with the old hard problem of consciousness ever since. But hey, don't feel bad, it drove the philosopher Stoics crazy too. This spark seems to separate us from animals, beasts of the land that reflect the archons rather than the image of a primordial Christ, also born of Sophia. Footnote, I can't help but wonder if these threads of light gifted from the Sophia might tie us to the former mentioned Kundalini Shakti. Again, let me know. She divided herself in half to be in two places at the same time. Shrink it down and spread it out, and we are looking point blank at quantum entanglement. What she observed and experienced in this realm would have instant communion with herself in the pleroma, the causal realm. I think this to be most well depicted in the chariots of the Bhagavad Gita, hosting two wayfarers. One as the operator, the driver steering the horses, and the other a passenger just observing, but is sometimes a navigator. The text goes on that this flawed universe constellated itself in three regions: solid, liquid, gas. Three states of matter that we now know comes from a fourth, or a primordial first, called plasma. Plasma being the original state or chariot in which this sentience drives, that is, before this fall from grace. Speaking of plasma, this Gnostic text also describes a world above the planets, inhabited by twin angels of human personalities. We are just now finding that the majority of stars are actually binary. And it is specifically binary star systems like Cygnus that emit the cosmic radiation known to have influence on the human genome, and thus consequently thought and emotion. The three cosmic regions that create borders in this new universe were said in the Codex to also correspondingly reside within mankind. We have Hyle, reproduction and physical flesh, solids; Psyche, emotions and such, directly associated with water or liquid; and of course, Pneuma, air, which is said to be the closest of the three to the original state of Sophia, or plasma. All three of which were said to be corruptions of the original primordial state, or slowed down, dumbed down forms of energy. Energy that, like the atomic structures we see in physics, have no actual solid matter within them, and when split into sections, still contain the whole. Energy that has become so dense, it appears to be our tangible world, or Maya. A world that was accidentally made lifeless due to a syntax error called the Fall, but is pregnant with beings who can recognize, alchemize, and awaken the spark of life within all matter that was gifted by our primordial mother, Sophia. And doing so is where we finally diverge from modern science without looking back. Because doing so, as said in every single religion and esoteric sect, Eastern, Western, the world over, will send ripples of change throughout the entire cosmos and laterally into the heavens, proving that spirit trapped in matter can reawaken and transcend the bonds of Indra's net, the wheel of samsara, the web of archons, etc. This is the alchemy that makes us, as humanity, the Hercules to Prometheus, because this alchemy is the process needed to set someone else free, someone who believes in us and is counting on us. The angels of morning that, according to Enoch, fell with us.
Do me a favor. Put that in a triangle pattern here. Okay, so we have 3 monks. Draw a line segment between all of these 4 vertices. How many line segments are there?
6?
Yep. How many triangular faces that have 3 vertices on them?
4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Add those 3 numbers up. What do you get?
14.
Okay. Imagine that you label the 4 faces X, Y, Z, and then T is the one that's in the table because it's a little different. So those are the 4 normal dimensions that Einstein knows about. This is how to think about the actual dimensions that we have open to us. I believe that you have all 6 edges are dimensions, and all 4 vertices are also dimensions. I'm talking about a hidden world, and there's this bizarre force field that anybody who wants to talk about physics gets slammed. We don't know why. But the only thing about a new idea in physics is that a new idea changes the balance of power in the world.
We've seen the parallels, but what is the difference between mysticism and quantum science? Well, that answer is simple. It's the same difference between esoteric and exoteric. Meaning, modern science does a great job studying the objective micro workings of the causal, but the equations and terminology leave us bewildered and empty-handed. In this regard, scientific jargon is really no good for applications to the self with a cap S. To be frank, I think jargon is a byproduct of over-measuring a copy of a copy. It's meant to demonstrate, to impress, to rationalize, as a necessity with, therefore, to others. To make sure all of our reality boxes are the same dimensions, and all of our bushes are trimmed to the same shape. Something that people named Ed don't seem to bother with. The mystics didn't make this mistake any more than Ed. They understood the causal to be beyond words and rational thinking. As a result of this more subjectively aimed study, the so-called other side could be accessed. It can bring us to life with purpose and certitude. With just that flipping of the mindset, all of a sudden it is pregnant with meaning. Meaning that is unique to each of us as unshareable, incoagulable, thus untrimmed individuals. But if we are to make an attempt at feudal word utility, and that is certainly my game here, we should make it simple. Perhaps I can simplify it down to one word: karma. Pretty cliche, right? You feel like you just walked into a crystal shop, don't you? Well, let's do the math. The causal realms exist, no matter which noisy name negation you tie to it. It causes, but it is also seemingly void, to us at least. This is pure receptivity, a feedback loop of cause and effect that goes both ways, like your dream with Tom Holland. In scientific speak, we might say every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and this is absolutely proven. But where this phrase hangs its hat is insistently mechanical. This bumps this and this bumps back. But the mystic sees more dimensions of livable reality than those measured by instruments. This action and reaction also applies and takes place in a lateral sense. Its wake ripples in unseen worlds where mind and matter meet. Make no mistake, if your personal cause and effect benefits you and only you here in this tangible realm, well, it has an equal and opposite reaction in a world that we are completely ignorant of in this life. Let me hit you with that one again. If your personal cause and effect benefits you and only you in this tangible realm, it has an equal and opposite reaction in a world that you are completely ignorant of in this life. This is what we all need to think about. This is the real meaning of karma, cliches aside. This is the result of being measured by the inhabitants of the so-called other side, the old Anubis post-death vibe check. And if the Vajrayana are right, those inhabitants are us, our own mind reflected perpetually. This Ouroboros of the ancient Western alchemist is personal and paradoxically impersonal, because we are all in this together. Another oversaid cliche that rings out to the sound of eye rolls in our modern world. But Eastern or Western, ancient or modern, theist or atheist, doesn't matter. While in this realm, all we have is each other. Our collective reality construct is the only thing contrasting the eternal void of endless black. So, we might as well serve. Like I said in the Cube one, and worth saying again, to serve man is to serve God. Another cliche that might be met with an eye roll. Well, until it's too late.